10. Nev Loader. Traveling to get surgeries and other procedures done, a practice known as medical tourism, is becoming increasingly popular, especially among Westerners looking to escape the sky-high prices of treatment in their home countries. In 2022, a 25-year-old college student from Australia named Nev Loader traveled from the Greater Perth area to the Indonesian island of Bali to get some minor dental work done. The procedure occurred without any apparent complications, and Loader was pleased with the results. But something went terribly wrong afterward, and she was found dead in the bathroom of her hotel room. An autopsy was finally performed 2 weeks after she passed away, but the findings were inconclusive, bringing authorities no closer to determining the young woman's cause of death. A police spokesperson said that investigators have questioned at least 7 people, including hotel employees, the dentist who worked on Loader's teeth, and a tattoo artist. For now, her death remains shrouded in mystery. 9. Tourists kidnapped after missing tummy tuck appointment. On March 3, 2023, 34-year-old Latavia McGee drove from South Carolina to the Mexican city of Matamoros with her close friends Eric Williams, Shahid Woodard, and Zindel Brown to get a tummy tuck. It was her second time traveling to Mexico for a cosmetic procedure, and she wasn't expecting anything to go wrong. But this time was different. She got lost just minutes after crossing the border from Brownsville, Texas, had no phone service, and ran late for the appointment as the group tried to figure out where they were going. Suddenly, the driver of the car behind their rented van started honking their horn. Zindel Brown saw that someone in the vehicle had a gun and warned his group not to stop driving. Gunfire rang out, and the friends were ambushed by armed men in broad daylight. Brown, Shahid Woodard, and Eric Williams were shot. The gang forced the group into the bed of a pickup truck at gunpoint and carried the 3 others, then drove away from the scene. A short while later, Brown and Woodard succumbed to their injuries. McGee and Williams were held captive for the next 4 days alongside the bodies of their dead friends, while they were moved between various locations and interrogated. At one point, they were taken to a clinic where Williams received some crude stitches to his gunshot wound. He received no anesthesia, and the person treating him didn't look for the bullet before stitching his leg up. After realizing that the victims had no intentions to meddle with their illicit business, the kidnappers let the survivors go, leaving them next to a shack along with the remains of Brown and Woodard. The Gulf Cartel issued an apology letter for what appears to be a case of mistaken identity. US officials believe that the cartel mistook McGee and her friends as Haitian drug smugglers. McGee told CNN that the captors were armed at all times and had police scanners. They blindfolded her and Williams while transporting them from one place to another and remained one step ahead of law enforcement. Their level of sophistication seems to fit with the idea that the abductors were cartel members. Experts estimate that every year, tens of thousands of Americans get plastic surgery in Mexico, where prices are just a fraction of what the same operations cost in the United States. Tourists are cautioned to avoid certain areas, including the state of Tamaulipas, where cartel violence is rife. Many people go anyway, and nothing bad usually happens. In fact, it's extremely rare for cartels to target Americans with violence. But as this tragedy shows, there are potentially life-threatening dangers that come with getting cosmetic procedures done across the border. 8. Diara Akua Eunice Brown. 28-year-old Diara Akua Eunice Brown was among the hundreds of thousands of people who traveled to Turkey in 2021 for plastic surgery. She got liposuction to remove fat from her hips at a clinic in Istanbul and returned a few days later for a standard post-operative checkup. As the surgeon changed her dressings, she suddenly fell ill. Brown's condition rapidly deteriorated, and she died just hours later. Authorities declined to name the surgeon, known only as SGB, but said that they'd arrested him and were investigating the case. He repeatedly told law enforcement that Brown seemed fine until she got sick out of nowhere, and that he had no idea what caused the sudden onset of symptoms. Updates have been scarce since news of the tragedy broke, and it's unclear what became of the situation. 7. Iconic Fanchi. With a name like Iconic Fanchi, you know the next story on today's list is gonna be good. It all started one day in February 2019 when a woman entered a bank in Gulfport, Mississippi, and handed the teller a note stating that they had 1 minute to hand over some cash or they would die. She made off with $4,800. Witnesses held police identified the suspect as 39-year-old Iconic Fatshay, formerly known as Jimmy Lewis. Her abandoned Cadillac was found near the crime scene, and cell phone data put her within the vicinity at the time of the robbery. By the time investigators followed her trail to the Houston International Airport in Texas, she had left the country. They soon discovered that Miss Fatshay had run off to Mexico with her ill-gotten cash. She used the money to get plastic surgery on her cheeks, lips, and nose. When she flew back into town, she tried to stealthily make her way through the airport without alerting authorities to her presence. But it was impossible not to notice her bandaged and swollen face, and officers quickly took her into custody. Fatshay pleaded guilty to 2 counts of bank robbery after a lengthy court battle and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. As it turned out, this wasn't the first time she robbed a bank to pay for medical procedures. Back in 2008, she reportedly stole $10,000 from banks to fund her gender confirmation surgery. She served a 15-month sentence for her crimes only to re-offend years later, so it's perhaps understandable that the court was less forgiving the second time around. 6. Alicia Rennet Williams. During the summer of 2019, beloved high school English teacher Alicia Rennet Williams traveled from Birmingham, Alabama to the Dominican Republic to get some procedures done at, once again, the Dr. Lorena Arias Clinic in Santo Domingo. The 45-year-old suffered from blood clots and other complications following the surgeries and passed away 5 days later. In a video posted to her Facebook page around the time of the tragedy, plastic surgeon and safe surgery advocate Dr. Myla Bennett acknowledged that botched procedures are known to take place in various countries, and even in some parts of the US like Miami. But she said that the Dominican Republic is a little different than other places, because even in cases where patients don't die, they often suffer aggressive infections that are extremely hard to treat. According to Dr. Bennett, symptoms sometimes take weeks to appear and are often vague at first. In a lot of cases, the infections require heavy-duty antibiotics which come with unpleasant side effects, including the tendency to make patients extremely sick. Even after enduring what sounds like pure hell, those who survive are lucky compared to those who experience deadly complications. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has echoed Dr. Bennett's sentiments, with numerous warnings to the public against traveling to the Dominican Republic for plastic surgery. Just a few weeks after Williams' death, a 26-year-old New York woman named Shannon Palmer died after getting 6 operations done at the same clinic. A third tragedy came on the heels of the women's deaths, and the facility was finally shut down by the Dominican government. But there are undoubtedly other shady practices out there. Advocates for safe surgery encourage patients to do intensive research into the procedures and providers they're considering before making a commitment, and not to get too many things done at once. 5. Shannon Palmer. Like many women, 35-year-old Shannon Palmer wanted to feel better about her appearance after having children. She spent years saving up her money, and in 2022, she finally had enough money to get a mummy makeover done in Mexico. The mother of 3 traveled from Vancouver, Washington to Tijuana for the procedure, which included a tummy tuck, a chest lift, and a transfer of fat to her hips from other parts of her body. Palmer had meticulously researched providers and was confident that she was in good hands with her chosen doctor, who had all the proper credentials and was highly reviewed. But she was alarmed when she woke up from the operation and felt an agonizing sensation in her hands. Nothing had gone wrong with the actual mummy makeover, but Palmer's fingers were in excruciating pain. They were cold, yet they felt like they were burning. She didn't find out why until the next day, when the doctor explained that a member of the surgical team had placed saline bags in her hands to keep them warm, but had failed to check the temperature of the bags first. They were dangerously hot and left Palmer's hands covered in second and third degree burns. Staff members did their best to treat the injuries, which became covered with huge blisters. They drained the blisters, changed the dressings, and applied ointment. The complications kept Palmer laid up at a hospital in Mexico for 4 days before she was finally able to return to the US. By the time she arrived home, she had lost all sensation in her thumb and middle finger. She sought a second opinion from American experts who tried to save her hands by putting her in a hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber. In the meantime, Palmer struggled with the humiliating reality of needing help with the most basic and personal tasks, including eating, showering, and using the bathroom. After 20 sessions in the oxygen chamber, doctors concluded that they couldn't save all of her fingers. Upon hearing the news, Palmer had an anxiety attack. She begged the doctors not to amputate, but ultimately realized that they had no other choice. Palmer lost half of her right thumb and about an inch of her left middle finger. She's no longer able to fully participate in some of the hobbies she enjoyed before, like sewing, art, and playing the piano. And it made her role as a mother much more difficult, making activities that are supposed to be memorable more complicated and frustrating than anything. The clinic that burned Palmer's hands paid the $6,000 for the hyperbaric oxygen treatments, but went like ghosts when she tried getting them to cover the $2,400 amputation bill. She told the New York Post that she never imagined in a million years that she would come out of a mummy makeover with 2 less fingers. Palmer went public with her story to warn other plastic surgery patients to research not only their doctor, but the supporting staff members who might be part of the surgical team. 4. Alexandra Medina. 33-year-old Alexandra Medina traveled from New Rochelle, New York to the Dominican Republic in 2019 for a tummy tuck and liposuction, and she sadly never made it back to the United States. She died on the operating table a day after arriving in the country, leaving her family heartbroken and longing for answers about what went wrong. Her sister, Maxine David, told CBS News that Medina was unhappy with her appearance. She consulted with several doctors in the US about getting liposuction, but was reportedly told that she had to lose weight before they could safely perform the procedures. But the staff at Dr. Lorena Arias Clinic in Santo Domingo allegedly told Medina that they'd dealt with bigger women before and that it would be no problem to do the operations, and it would also be much cheaper. Medina's family warned her to really think before committing to the surgeries. They told her that the whole thing seemed rushed and reminded her that she was already beautiful to begin with. But she trusted that she was in good hands and went ahead with her plans. The Spanish-language news outlet Noticias Sin reported that Medina's preliminary cause of death was ruled as an embolism. She was the 3rd American to die in the span of just 1 month after receiving treatment at the Dr. Lorena Arias Clinic, prompting widespread outcries for justice. As it turned out, the clinic apparently wasn't even licensed to perform aesthetic surgeries. Authorities shut it down and launched an investigation into the facility. But it's alarmingly common for patients to experience life-threatening and deadly symptoms after receiving plastic surgery in the Dominican Republic, leaving Medina's family concerned that the issue would ultimately be swept under the rug. 3. Unwell after weight loss surgery. Turkey is one of the world's top medical tourism destinations. It's particularly popular among Brits, who commonly go there for a wide variety of procedures. But not everyone returns well or even alive. A BBC investigation published in March 2023 revealed that at least 7 British patients have died after traveling to Turkey for weight loss surgery, while others returned to the UK with troubling complications. The procedure, known as a gastric sleeve, removes around 70% of the patient's stomach to make it smaller. As a result, the person gets full from a small amount of food and theoretically has an easier time losing weight. Getting the operation covered by the country's health insurance plan is reportedly a waiting game though, and people understandably become impatient. Many go to Turkey, where they can get the gastric sleeve done for an affordable price. One woman, known only as Katie, traveled to Turkey for her operation in 2021. She told the BBC that she was in agonizing pain shortly after the surgery was done, but staff members told her it was just trapped gas. Katie made it back to the UK, but the trip was excruciating. A few days after arriving back home, she was rushed to the hospital with a life-threatening sepsis infection and pneumonia. She spent the next year in and out of the hospital battling 6 separate sepsis infections and other complications. Doctors ended up removing her entire stomach, and the effects have been devastating. Plagued by constant exhaustion, Katie was forced to give up her career caring for the elderly and is no longer able to live a normal life. She described her decision to get weight loss surgery abroad as life-ruining and the worst mistake she's ever made. National Health Service consultant Dr. Sean Woodcock told the BBC that a very unwell patient arrives at Newcastle Airport from Turkey with surgical complications once a week on average. And the investigation found that the number seems to be increasing, making it more important than ever for patients to make informed decisions. 2. Laura Avia. Nose jobs are a lot cheaper in Mexico than the United States, and Texas is right next door to the country. So, it made sense when Dallas real estate agent Laura Avia decided to travel across the border for a rhinoplasty in 2018. The 36-year-old went to the Rhino Center Clinic in Juarez with fiancé Enrique Cruz to get the operation done along with some breast augmentation work. She went into cardiac arrest for 4 minutes during the procedure and was put in a medically induced coma to prevent further damage. But the damage was done. After realizing there was nothing more they could do for her, doctors took Avia out of the coma and put her on life support. Avia spent 4 days at a Mexican hospital before being transferred to a hospital in El Paso, where staff members gave her family the painful options to either let her go in peace or have her physically here. In other words, her chances of full recovery were next to impossible, and if she were to improve, she would function minimally at best and would essentially have no quality of life. The family was understandably torn and took the time they needed to make the decision. Avia spent a month in hospice before succumbing to her injuries. The young woman's sister, Angie Avia, told CBS News that the doctor who performed Laura's surgery admitted they had administered anesthesia to the wrong part of her spine. In addition to sending her into cardiac arrest, the mistake caused her brain to swell and her kidneys to fail. According to Laura's fiancé, Enrique Cruz, the emergency happened just 4 minutes into the operation, but staff members failed to inform him of the situation until 8 hours later. In a Facebook post, he said that he covered Laura's hospital bills, gave some financial support to her family, and was now determined to seek justice for his fiancé's untimely death. It took some time, but authorities finally arrested the doctor who performed the botched procedure, Judith Hernandez, in 2022. She maintained her innocence through her lawyers, who said that they would provide proof that Hernandez is not responsible for Avia's death. In fact, Hernandez has denied participating in the surgery altogether. News reports on the arrest were vague and failed to clarify exactly what Hernandez was charged with, but confirmed that the clinic had been shut down. The case appears to be ongoing. 1. Laura Donald. After saving her money for years, Laura Donald traveled from Oxford, England to the Polish city of Wrocław in 2015 for a breast augmentation and liposuction to her thighs. Shortly after the procedure, she began to feel discomfort and pain. When she complained to a nurse, she was told she would be fine. Donald's condition worsened, but she managed to get on a flight back to the UK. Once she arrived, her family rushed her to the hospital, where doctors quickly determined that she was suffering from a life-threatening sepsis infection. The mother of 3 later told the press that she was in such bad shape she doesn't remember much about her time in the hospital. Her loved ones later told her that she was in critical condition and had fought for her life. Over the next few years, Donald underwent multiple reconstructive surgeries, which included painful skin grafts and revisions to the botched work that was done in Poland. She said she spent months researching the surgeries before traveling to get them, and had verified the credentials of the surgeons who performed the procedures. Convinced that there was nothing else she could have done to make an informed decision, Donald hired a lawyer and sued the practice. The judge who oversaw the case held the practice responsible for her suffering and awarded a judgment in her favor. Thanks for watching. If someone died at the operating table at a doctor's office where you plan to get surgery in the near future, but the surgeon insisted that it wasn't their fault and their explanation seemed believable, would you still consider going there, or would you automatically cancel the procedure and look for another provider? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.